the colon, so pumping sludge through the digestive system, or moving air in and out of the lungs that could, pump gases. And then here, externally triggered modes. That's the ones, under control of voluntary muscles. You can move your fingers. And notice the real high signal-to-noise ratio, very fine control, like the movements of your eye muscles, are just incredibly, just little teeny effects, And then you got big muscles, with big broad effects and so on. So all of that is a muscle. Okay. And here's a little diagram. This would be like a diagram, of a bicep or something like that. And here are the muscles, wrapped up in some connective tissue. And they come in bundles of fibers. And so these fibers are thick and thin filaments that say these are the ends of one of the sections. And the filaments slide together and the muscle contracts. The filaments move apart, the muscle relaxes. And so all of the muscle, including the heart muscle, it's this filament sliding together, moving apart. And here it shows it down here in the bottom. The thick and the thin filaments just pull together and push apart. And what does that, here's a close-up of muscle fiber. In a minute, maybe, okay. And so here are these thick and thin filaments. They're little bridges. One of the thick filaments are made of myosin molecules that look like golf clubs. And they attach to the thin filaments like this. And then on cue, they bend in. And they pull the thin filaments in. And they let go, grab again, pull forward. They'll let go, grab again, pull forward. And what triggers all that, this is getting back to the topic. So here are these muscle filaments surrounded by this sort of pinkish stuff here is a sac, a calcium sac with a fancier name, sarcoplasmic reticulum. But muscles, and nerves too, but muscles require calcium to work. And so here you have these little bridges ready to go, but there's something between blocking the contact between the bridge and so nothing happens until you get this little thing out of the way. And then bridge contact is made and the motion occurs. Well, it's calcium that gets the little blocker out of the way. And so the calcium is stored in these sacs. And so you trigger a nerve impulse, triggers a muscle to contract, dumps a chemical in it that's carried right next to the sac, and causes the membrane to release all this calcium. And so the calcium moves the blocker out of the way, and the little filaments start working like crazy to contract the muscle. But as soon as the calcium is released, it starts diffusing back into the sac, and there are enzymes that grab it and pull it back in. So again, it's all timed just right to make this work. So this is something I used to, do with the students. Here's a little, here's the thin filament, here's a thick filament with this little golf club on it, and ready to make this contact. And so as soon as you get a nerve impulse, it makes an electrical wave over the membrane. It releases calcium, and then that calcium moves a little blocker out of the way. And when the blocker is moved out of the way, the head tilts and pulls the filaments forward, and then it releases. But when it pulls it forward, it lines it up with the next head 6 molecules down. And so that one can pull while the first one is recovering. So it's like a very coordinated rowing team in 3 dimensions. So this is kind of wild. And then, of course, the calcium begins to come back. As soon as the calcium is all gathered up again, then the muscle relaxes. And so then you have to stimulate it over if you want that to go on. So even at this, and the controls are exceedingly tight, the motion imparted by one contraction is 5 times the diameter of a hydrogen atom. And so when you talk about fine tuning, each little contraction motion is just 5 times the diameter of a hydrogen atom. And the control is all based on diffusion and diffusion timed and coordinated to match the needs of the system. Wow! So it's not just plant power, but our power depends on the power of the living God. Well, let me stop there then and give you time for questions on this or related topics. Yes. Congratulations, by the way.
I was wondering, is any of the calcium lost in that process, or does it all go back into the sac?
Most all of it goes back into the sac. I'm sure that over time, a little bit of calcium may be lost, but I don't think very much. There's calcium lost from the body in other processes, so you need to have calcium in your diet on a regular basis. And I suppose maybe some of it, doesn't quite make it back, but it'd have to leak out of the cell entirely or it would get in the way. So it has to be pulled up, otherwise the muscle would contract and stay contracted. And so I think, but very little of it escapes there. We do get some calcium loss. We do need to have calcium replenished in our diet, but very little of it lost right there at that level. Yes?
On the biosphere, they had this enclosure where they had trees. And because the trees were not affected by the wind, they ended up dying because they just didn't have that constant requirement to, like a muscle, if you don't use it, it dies.
Oh.
So I'm not sure how this fits with, apparently the muscle has to be in vibration, otherwise it die too, right?
Yeah, that's right. Use it or lose it, so to speak. And I may be a living example of that. And unused muscles actually lose fibers, and so the thick and thin filaments, the actin and myosin fibers, deteriorate. They disappear. You have fewer fibers per bundle, fewer bundles per muscle, and then it can fill in with fatty tissue or connective tissue. And it's kind of hard to replace if you lose a cell altogether. Usually when you bulk up, someone was reasonably healthy, they exercise and their muscles really increase, you're actually usually increasing the size of the individual cells, not increasing the number of cells, but you're increasing the number of fibers per cell. And of course the things, the calcium sacs and all that, develop at the same time, so it remains a coordinated set. And so I guess that would be the case. You need to keep using these things or they might lose some of their abilities. Wind stress on plants can be very helpful in stimulating growth and maintaining a certain kind of growth. And it influences, a little wind is very helpful in moving water up through the plant.